Well, as a Brevard Author Society representative, I'm really grateful to the Moon River Cafe and the Broderick's for kind of making a home for us and promoting the literary arts. So thank you, Kate. But anyway, it's about Mr. Nelson today, and I didn't know that I was introducing him today, but it's quite.
How long have we known each other?
Well, I was just going to say, 15 plus years, I guess. So I probably know more than I should tell.
Yeah, that's right. Please.
It's another book.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Jim's an amazing author. I've also been in his critique group for that long, so I know the first drafts better than I do the finished drafts. Because when you get to read a book through a critiquing and editing process, typically by the time it's done, you're either really tired of it, or they don't want to show it to you anymore, or you're ready to move on to his next book, which he always does. He pours out a new book at least once a year and has. I don't do it that way. He's got a plan. I shoot by the seat of my pants, and so we go back and forth and argue about this all the time. We argue about character arcs and whether they're necessary or not, but it doesn't really matter as long as at the end of the day you get your book done. And look at this guy. I mean, is he not prolific or what? Because he's got a plan, he sticks to it, and that is success. So without further ado, and I could tell you a lot more, his beautiful wife is here. We've seen them grow together. Yeah, so they live down the beach, in case you want to follow them down there afterwards.
Hey now.
Jim Nelson.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming.
I forgot to give a plug about the
I'm
Brevard
going to do
Author
that.
Society.
It's in here, but I thought you would do that. So I'm representing the Brevard Author Society, and that's an organization for aspiring or accomplished authors. We do a lot of things. We have things like this, book talks, book signings. We have educational programs, and we have contests. We just had a wonderful children's book contest, and we try to keep everything for free or a very nominal charge. So if you're interested in that, it's brevardauthor.society.org. Look us up. You can join right from the web page. It doesn't cost anything. And the best thing about it is you'll get to meet a lot of people.
One winner in one of the
One of the
categories.
categories right there. Right. All right, but before we begin, let's take a second to just look around here and just marvel at what Kate and her family have done and the vision they have come up with, and how amazing it is for Melbourne to have this as a place for authors and artists and everything. And Kate, we just love you, and we're so happy. And I'm more than honored to be the first author to give my little talk, so it's amazing. I'm going to apologize, first of all. I've had a couple of mocktails. You have 3 of those, your head kind of starts spinning, so you just watch out. No more, Kate. Don't bring me any. I'm not sure. All right, so about myself. This will take, my talk is about 25 minutes. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, a little bit about writing, and then I'm going to pick one of my books and talk about that a little bit. But the best thing about these things are the questions. So I'm hoping you have questions, because it's fun for me to try to think on my feet and answer these questions. So I'm the former Space Coast Writers Guild treasurer. I'm a founding member, as Cindy is, of the Brevard Author Society. I've taught a class on how to write your first novel for the SAIL organization, Senior Adventures in Learning, for about 9 years, 3 times a year to hundreds of people. I've given countless author talks, book signings, writing seminars in Florida, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I've been busy. As you can see, I do write mysteries. So when you meet people and you're an author, it's kind of interesting, because they'll say, "Oh, what do you do? Do you work?" "No, yeah, I work." "What do you do?" "Well, I write mysteries." And they're like, "Yeah, that's not work." Well, it kind of is work. It's not really easy. And I can actually prove it to you that it is quite consuming. So Does anybody know the author Jim Harrison? Jim Harrison. He's fairly famous. He's another Michigan author. I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Some of his accomplishments, he wrote Legends of the Fall, so he made into, I think, 2 movies. He was going broke, and Jack Nicholson sent him $30,000 in 1978, and that gave him enough money to complete Legends of the Fall. He's won all kinds of awards. He's won the Guggenheim Fellowship, the Mark Twain Award for Distinguished Contributors to Midwest Literature. He was inducted into the American Academy of Arts. So the reason I bring it up is Jim Harrison, as an author, it took a lot out of him. Here's a picture of him. I think he was like 43. So, you know, if I tell you it's not easy being an author, believe me. Anyway, that's that. So why do authors write? So we have several authors here. Cindy, why do you write?
Because I always have.
All right. You write.
I do. Because I have something to say.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a story to tell.
You had a story. Okay. So everybody's going to have a little different answer. Some people write to become famous. That's not a really good idea. Okay. And even worse is they write because they want to make a lot of money. That's, it could happen. But you never know. So why do I write? I write because I like to build worlds of my own and populate them with characters and see what happens. Let them loose. And I've read many books on writing about where the author is typing and all of a sudden the character takes off and they're typing and you're like, oh, slow down, I can't keep up. And I always thought, that's insane. The author is writing the story. No. That does happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it's the actual best writing that you're doing. So that's what's the fun part. Okay, so what does an author face when they sit down to write a new book? So I've got 16. This book isn't out yet. It's called The Disappeared Debutante. It's in the editing stage right now. So like Cindy said, I never stop. If I've got a book that's being edited, I jump right into a new one, and I'm kind of thinking around a new one right now. But what do we face? So here's what we face. I face about this many blank pages here. MJ back there faces about 2 of these blank pages. Now that's quite daunting, right? If you're sitting down and you're like, I have to fill all of these pages. Not only that, they have to make sense. I have to have a beginning, I have to have a character arc, I have to have things wrapped up. In my case, if I write mysteries, I have to worry about that. And Kate said, would you give a talk on writing? I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? She said, well, just how you do it and everything. I said, Kate, do I have to tell you all my secrets? And she said, well, yeah, because this is a special thing. You're the first author. Don't hold back. I don't tell everybody this, but how I really get going when I face all those pages is I use this. It's called Writer's Tears. It's Irish whiskey. If you pour 3 glasses of it, anybody can write. I mean, it can just start going. So don't tell everybody that. So, I write, I've got 2 series and standalones. So, these first 5 books here are my Stephen Morehouse series. They're mysteries about a young man whose uncle is a B horror movie director, and they have adventures in mysteries. The next 4 books here, and the book I just finished, are my private detective series, and I had written several books and I didn't have a private detective. I thought, gee, I really need one. So the first book I wrote was this one, which is a little thicker than the rest. It's about 94,000 words. And in this book, Archie Archibald, he's a detective about 60 years old in Fort Lauderdale. And the book starts out where he wakes up in a dumpster staring up at the sky at night, and he's like, where am I? Well, he got beaten up and thrown in a dumpster. So he said, this Fort Lauderdale is too rough for me now. It's changed, and I lived in Fort Lauderdale for many years. So he decides to move to Vero because a friend of his was fishing in Fellsmere and he knows the area. And he thinks Vero is a little better, there's money there, it's not as rough. So when he gets to Vero, the richest woman in Vero disappears and Archie gets the case. And the only reason he gets the case is he doesn't know anybody there and he doesn't really know what's going on. So that was kind of fun. Now this series is a little different because that was the first one I wrote. He was 60, and I don't write these in order. I always write a couple other books and then go back to my series. This one, he retires. He's made enough money in this book, so he retires and he buys a cabin up in northern Michigan. And then a couple of books later, I thought, well, how did this guy become a detective? So I went all the way back and I started with this one. And now he's in his 20s, and it tells the story of how he became a detective. And when this mystery ends, this mystery starts about 10 minutes later because they see somebody walking into his office, and his friend says, well, it's of course a pretty redhead. And his friend said, well, that's going to be interesting. And that's how he ended the book. So then I pick it up here, and I forgot about that. So it was several years later when I was going to write this book, and I started writing a book. And I'm like, wait a minute, how did I end that book? So I looked it up, and I'm like, oops, I really have to incorporate this. So I had to change my thought. And then the book that has just finished, The Disappeared Debutante, starts about maybe 6 or 8 months after this one. So then there's a big, huge time. That's my series. Then I have quite a few standalone books. And if you can see, I have a thing for old houses and a lot of my books. An old kind of creepy house is a character in the book because I think it's kind of fun. All right, any questions so far?
So how do you track your series from one book to the next? Or do you just keep it in your memory?
So I keep a notebook, and I've written every single one of my books with that notebook. And I have a character list, character profiles, and I write, as Cindy said, there's pantsers and there's plotters. Many authors are pantsers. They write by the seat of their pants. They just sit down and write. I can't write like that. I have to plot. So I plot out in scenes. So when I start a book, I'll make 50 scene sheets because I know that a book, my books average 65 to 75,000 words, and that's going to equal 45 to 50 scenes. So then I'll have my scene sheets and I write like that. And we'll get a little bit more into that. So then, and I had to do that to go back, I just pull out that notebook and I look, and I can bring myself up to speed with the characters and things like that. Yeah.
Do you use a typewriter?
No, I use a keyboard. Yeah, keyboard.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Some people still go
Oh,
back
they
to
sure do.
typewriter.
And some people use a pencil.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's an interesting thing. Everybody has 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 favorite authors, right? But your favorite authors aren't necessarily your friends' favorite authors. And have we ever been in a situation where you've read a book by your favorite author and you give it to a friend and they read it, and a week later, 2 weeks later, they give it back and you say, what do you think? What do you think? And they're like, eh. And you're like, what? This was one of my best books. So why is that? Can somebody give me one of their favorite authors and why they like them? Can anybody tell me that? I know Olive has a favorite author. We both share Nero Wolfe mysteries. Yeah, Gordy.
I like it because you're a cousin to my wife.
Oh, he likes my books because that's my cousin. Yeah.
You
Gordy,
wanted
the
a
only
re- you
reason-
wanted a reason?
The only reason you like my books is you get them for free. And by the way, he was a beta reader for several of my books. He's like a first editor and did a fabulous job. So, but I burned him out. I never stopped writing. So. Okay, one more. Anybody? Yes, sir.
I have I mean, Cormac McCarthy's an interesting writer.
Okay.
Because it's written like a stream of consciousness rather than a
Okay.
definitive format.
All right, and you like that, and there'll be some people that don't care.
A lot of people don't like it. Yeah,
Right,
which
exactly.
I
But
completely
it's
understand.
and it's always like that with our friends. So, how many people here have read Louise Penny? Oh wow, yeah. She's a mystery author, and people love her, and people, I'm like, I like her, but she's not my favorite. But she has a hook, and your favorite author has a hook, and your favorite author has a, her hook is what? What do you think it would be?
Louise Penny's,
Yeah. Starts with a
3 Pines.
3. It's 3 Pines.
Absolutely.
There's a little location, it's a little town, all the books start out there. And when we read her, if you've read several of them, you know the bookstore person, you know the person, the two people that own the cafe, you know the lady with the duck, and it's like old friends, and people want to go there. She's actually got a bookstore in Canada that buses come to and visit because, and they want it to be 3 Pines, but it's not. So I have a hook too. And I'm going to read you a couple of my reviews, not to read my reviews, but to see if you can see what my hook is. All right. Here's a couple from the Hawthorne House, which I showed you. Oops. Okay, if you're looking for a great curl-up with a good book mystery, beach day, rainy day, sick day, or any day, I highly recommend this one. Short enough to read in a day or two. It is filled with intrigue and likable characters. If you've ever read a book and wondered why some characters were in the story, this is not that book. Characters in the Hawthorne House are interesting, well-developed, and relevant. The author's attention to detail makes the twists in the plot credible. This is a page-turner with a satisfying conclusion. And then it says, Youpers will certainly enjoy the setting, but anyone will enjoy the compelling story. I think this is one of Nelson's best, and if you've never read his works, you should. Youpers are people that live in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Another one on that book, terrific spooky house story. I love stories about old houses. The story didn't disappoint. It kept me engaged, waiting for its secrets to be revealed. Can't wait to check out more by this author. Another one, an amazing mystery, definitely a page-turner. Every chapter kept me in full suspense of what was going to happen next. I couldn't put it down. Mystery lovers everywhere need to read this awesome book. Okay, the next one is Winter Island, which is over here. It's got a tree house on it. I have read every book by this author and look forward to the next one. He does a good job of character development and handles multiple mysteries at the same time, but ties it all up at the end. Another one is, this is a murder mystery. Didn't know till the last few pages who done it. It was a total surprise, wonderfully written. Lots of amazing characters who come and go throughout the story, but all come together at the end. What a mind, what a storyteller. All right, so my hook is every one of my books has 2 completely different stories, or sometimes 3. So I'll start off with a premise of the main story, and it'll be a one-line, like a what if. So I'll give you an example. My first book I wrote 17 years ago. And I don't know if you know, but Michigan people always do this, and this is Lower Michigan, and this is the Upper Peninsula. We have about 30% of the land mass, and we have 90% of the bears in Michigan. So that should tell you what you need to know about Northern Michigan. And I always had a thought, what if a mobster from New York City was dropped in the middle of the Upper Peninsula? It would be such a different area. What would he be as dangerous, as forbidding? What would happen? And I had that idea way before I started writing. It was just something that was in my head. So when it came time to write my first book, that was my initial premise. And in the book, Stephen Morehouse decides to go visit his uncle, who's got a mansion in northern Michigan. Stephen's from New York City. He just graduated from high school. He wants to take a train because he wants to see the country. He doesn't want to fly. Well, he frames some person on the train, and his friend notices when they get up to go for coffee in the dining car or get a sandwich or whatever, there's another guy, a big guy in a wrinkled suit that seems to do the same thing. And after a while, the guy says, Stephen, is there any reason somebody would be following you? He's like a kid, you know. He said, what are you talking about? No, nobody be following me. Well, somebody is. And that's the initial premise. Then I always have another story. In this book, the story is very close to the first story. I don't really do that too much, but in this story, something really bad happens at the mansion. Has nothing to do with the big guy in the suit, but all the clues point to Steve. So what you want to do in any book you're writing, you want to throw conflict on your main character, because the reader wants to see how they get out of it, right? So I've dumped some conflict on it. So let's see here. I'll talk about Dying to Win a little later from that. So in a mystery, there's several things. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, do you ever think that maybe ending a story with an end that goes, oh, okay. Do you ever think that maybe a conclusion that makes you comfortable at the end is not always the correct way to end the story? Like, if you could write something where everything keeps going wrong and then it never wraps up.
I kind of did that in, I can't remember, one of these books, Unsafe Harbor, I think it was, where, I mean, you have to wrap up the story, I think. But what I did in that one, I wrapped up both of the stories completely. And then right at the end, I had someone step out of the woods and look and confront this person, and I kind of just faded off. Now, when I did that, what I do is I give my books, when I'm done writing, to several beta readers. And that's the first time beta readers. I gave it to like 4 beta readers. None of them liked it. They're like, yeah, you can't do that. But I liked it. Then I gave the book to my editor, and my editor said, no, that's not a good thing. So I'm like, okay, I'm running at 100%. So I wrote it, I changed it, and I hated it. So I'm like, nope, I put it back in. Yeah, some people like it, and that, you know, I tried it. I wouldn't do it every time, but it was kind of fun for me. And what I really have to do is write a sequel and carry that story on from there, but I haven't done that yet. But, you know, it can be done. So as a mystery author, I have to do several things. So I have to identify who my hero is. I have to determine who gets killed. These are murder mysteries. I have to determine who kills them and why. There has to be a why. It just can't happen, right? And then the hardest thing for me is, how does the protagonist solve the crime? So if it's a detective, it's going to be a little different than most of these books are amateur detectives that just get thrown into these mysteries. And that's the hardest thing. How do they solve the crime? And then all the while, I have to give the reader every clue. I cannot leave anything out, because that would be cheating the reader. But I have to do it in such a way that they don't figure it out. So I have to populate my books with red herrings, and I have to pick a character, and I have to start very little subtle things. So the reader's like, oh, I know who it is. It's George. Yeah, it's George. And then all of a sudden something happens, and they're like, well, it can't be George. Then I maybe have to give another red herring and direct them over here. And then at the end of the book, it's supposed to be a surprise, but it can't be a surprise like, oh, that could never happen, or he's left out half the things. So that's why, for me, to be a mystery writer, I can't do it by the seat of my pants. I have to plot these out. And when I start a new book, I'll spend 6 weeks at least taking notes and, okay, going from scene to scene to scene. And then I know where to weave these stories together, how to weave them together. I have a little formula I use. but it does get tricky, and it's interesting. A lot of my problems, when I have a problem, I'll wake up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'll have the answer. And many authors have this, and I think the longer you write, the more it happens. The most interesting thing that ever happened to me was in the Hawthorne house. So in this book, one of the side stories, this house has got a really bad reputation. It's like 7 miles outside of a small town. There's been murders there in the past and all kinds of bad things. So people know about it. And there's, in this story, a lady starts thinking about her college friend, her best friend in college. She hasn't seen her for 11 years. And they were supposed to get together right after college. And something happens and she has sold her business, so she has money and time. So another one of her friends says, well, why don't you try to find her? And the lady's like, well, how do they do that? I don't know. Well, they know that she's from a town. This is the first book I wrote that actually takes place in my hometown, which is called Escanaba, Michigan. So she does do that. And when she gets up there, she finds out that some of the family is living in the Hawthorne house. Well, she doesn't get a good response, believe me. But as another part of the story, there's a little kid, this takes place before, and he's not gonna, he wants to be in this clique in high school, like 10th grade, 11th grade, 10th grade. He's never gonna be there. He's from the wrong side of town and all this and that, but they're messing with him. And they say, oh, you want to be in our group? Yeah, you can be in our group. Oh, I can. What do I have to do? Well, we're going to drive you out to the Hawthorne house, and we're going to, now this is about 15 years, 18 years before the story starts. And we're going to drop you off. You have to run in there, and you have to stay in there for 10 minutes at night. And he's like, oh, I don't know about that. Do you want to be in the club? Yeah, that's what it is. So on Friday night, they steal some beer, they have a couple of beers, they drive him out there. He gets out of the car, he looks at this forbidding house, and he's like, no way, I'm not going to do it. And they said, no problem, have a nice walk back to town. They're going to get in the car and leave. Well, he's 7 miles out in the woods, so he's like, wait. I'll do it. So he runs in, and he never comes out. They wait. Finally, after an hour and a half, they're like, and they're not going there. So they go back to town. Now, I knew when I was, I'm the big plotter, when I'm plotting my book, I knew that character would show up in this book. And I knew exactly who it was going to be. And I was 2/3 finished writing this book, and I woke up one morning, and somebody told me, no, it can't be that guy, it has to be this guy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I had never had that thought ever in my mind. Where did that come from? And the more I thought, at first I thought, no, impossible. Then I thought, my God, it's better. It's so much better. So I had to go back, and all the little breadcrumbs and the little clues I had to change because I put it in there for this guy, and that wasn't easy. But isn't that interesting? How does that happen? I can't answer. I never had that thought, but it was much better. So things like that. Keep it interesting when you're writing.
So do you think I'm assuming you don't think it's better to be an isolated writer, right?
Well, I was an isolated writer. I mean, it was a sentence from somewhere. Not a person told me that. I woke up in the morning and that thought was in my head. So, yeah. Unless I was sleeping with a ghost. But I don't write horror.
Another book becomes...
Yeah. Now, let's talk about Dying to Win. And this book takes place in Melbourne, Florida. And normally, on all these books, people say to me, Jim, you've got 17, 16 books and you've got 2 or 3 plots on each one. Where do you come up with all these ideas? I don't know where I come up with these ideas, but like I said, it's usually a one sentence, like a what if. What if this happened? What if that happened? What if this? This was a completely different way to write this book. So the Space Coast Writers Guild has a Don Argo Award every year for the best book written that year. So Cindy, who's some people that
With
want
a
it?
setting in Florida.
Yeah, it has to be set in Florida, and it has to be written within 2 years. So
I won once.
she's a winner. She's a winner. So not all of my books are set in Florida. Half of them are in Michigan, half of them are in Florida. But I had submitted several times when my books fit, and you know, at first I wasn't expecting to win, but after a while, I'm like, hey, if Cindy can win, I can win. No, not true, not true. So, let's see here, right here. A couple of years ago, I submitted this book, Fatal Assumptions. I love this book. It takes place in Fort Lauderdale. It has just been published. It's quirky. It's a great mystery. Really like it. In fact, I'm writing, so I submitted it, and I'm like, I'm going to win. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that I was going to win. So I go to the meeting where they hand out the awards, and I'm sitting there, and and they announce, and the winner is, and I'm halfway up, I said, Peggy Insula. I'm like, what? Who is another member of our critique group. And I'm like, I was so happy for her. Oh, yeah, I was. So I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to write a book just to win that award. So I start writing this. It takes place in Melbourne. I have a hotel in here that I'm going to read a little bit about it at the first page. It's Hotel Melby, but I can't call it that or I'm going to get sued, but I picked it. It's 11 stories. It has a bar at the top. It's a writing group, an older lady. She belongs to a critique group. She belongs to an organization. I mean, it's like, bam, everything is like, this is Space Ghost Writers Group. Well, the problem was, I wasn't done with this book the next year. I couldn't send it in, so I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I think, well, the only book I have is the one I submitted already, and it didn't win. But I didn't want to just do nothing, so I thought, what the heck? I sent it in. Yeah.
Let's see here. You lied?
No, I could do it twice.
Oh.
Here's the Don Argo Award. I won the thing for the second submission. But here's my problem. So now this is the book that would really win. I mean, it should win because it's so perfect for the award. Once you win the Don Argo, you can't submit another book for 3 years. This book will be out of print for 1 year. Too long. I can't do it. But I wouldn't do it anyway. Once is enough. I wanted to win it. Once is enough. So that's it. All right. I think that's about enough recapping. So hopefully you have some questions. Yes, sir.
How do you write suspense in a way that you can like feel it? You know, when the resolution happens, your stomach drops, that kind of suspense.
I haven't got there yet. No. Well, I think what you have to do is you really have to work on your characters. And you have to have characters like your hero that people identify with and like. And then you can put them in situations where that will help. I mean, if people don't, and there are books, Julie read a book one time and she always finishes the book. And after a while she said, yeah, I'm done with this halfway through. I'm not going to finish it. I was like, what? I've never seen this happen. I said, why? She said, I don't care about any of these characters. That's not a good thing. And will she read another book by that author? No, I doubt it. So if you make your characters believable and where people identify with them, when you put them in those situations, they're going to worry about it. That's one reason. One way. Good, very good question. You write, by the way?
I've been interested in starting.
Yeah, good. Any others? Yes.
Which is your favorite book and why?
Okay, that would be like asking a mother with 7 children, which is your favorite? It's always the one you're working on now. It's always the one you're working on now, right? MJ, do you have a favorite? Yeah. No. You get so, you spend a year with this book, and you just live it, and you wake up and you sleep and you're thinking about it, and it's always a book. But then when it's done, it's like I'm on to the next one. So the favorite book now is the one I'm working on now, and it's just getting started. Yep.
Could you tell us about the process of how your first book came to be?
Okay, yeah, I can, exactly. So, you will not be able to identify with this, but some of us will. I always wanted to write since I was like 10 years old. And I'd try to write and it would all fall apart. And I'd get to page 57 and it would all fall apart. I think I got to page 76 once. The reason being, and I didn't know this at the time, but writers, as we mentioned, and this is a universal rule, they're either pantsers or they're plotters. I didn't know that. I didn't know I was a plotter and I was trying to write as a pantser. I wasted 30 years of my life doing that. And I looked in the mirror and suddenly my hair wasn't dark anymore. And I'm like, if I've got to figure this out, I better figure this out fast. Because my goal was to write one book, have one copy on my shelf. End of story. That was my lifetime goal. So what did I do? I bought another book on writing. I have this many books on writing because I like to read them. And they always tell you, you really need to plot your book, but they don't tell you how. So I looked around and I just bought another book. And it just happened to be the Marshall Plan for novel writing. And Olive, who is also a member of the Brevard board of the Brevard Author Society, knows Evan Marshall and actually sat next to him, which so anyway, that book told me how to plot. And so once I figured that out, I finished that book, and then now I have this down, and I know I could write a book every year. But it took that for me. Most writers are not plotters, but I happen to be one. I can't tell you that. That's one of my secrets. Evan Marshall. The Marshall Plan for novel writing. I can help you find it later if you need to. Yeah. All right. Any other, please, questions? Yeah.
What is a length or format or story type that you recommend for a first-time writer?
It depends on the genre. Genres, there are suggested and really recommended books. So, for example, I don't have the papers with me, but it's a bit close. And I know, if you're going to write a Harlequin romance, you have to be between 50 and 53,000 words. End of story. It's like a 10 or 20 page variance, and they're not taking it if you turn in 60,000 words. It has to be there. So mysteries, historically, there have been about 55 to 75,000 words. They're creeping up, though, which is surprising to me because the attention span of people with the internet and everything is going down, but the word count for mysteries is kind of going up. But like MJ writes fantasy, right? And what are your word counts?
200,000.
Yeah, and she's not kidding. I mean, like I'm not sure. That may be pushing it a little bit, but genres have recommended word counts. So whatever genre you're looking for, check it. You can find that easily. Do a Google search, and I would kind of stick to that, especially being a first-time writer. You don't want to bend the rules too much.
I think it's, I've recently been trying to read Salem's Lot by Steve. Excellent book.
Yeah.
But it's so big, like it's just, and it's, I can read, but it's, sometimes it's very time consuming.
Well, if you're starting out and you're worried about, write a novella, like 50,000, and then just get the hang of it. You don't have, I wouldn't suggest going for 200,000 words your first book, but just write. Really, I spent more than half of my life. I was always enamored by writers, and I talked about writing way more. I didn't write, but I talked about it. It was so much easier to talk about it, to sit down and write every day or whatever. It's a kind of a chore. But it's good. Yep.
So I just write children's books, but
Don't say just.
well,
We
I
need
write
children's
books.
books.
That's
Yeah.
right, you're right. But I've come to the not conclusion, but for almost 2 weeks I haven't looked at any of my writing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm stopping because either I don't like the way it's turning out, or not sure where to go to maybe possibly publish it. So I'm very needy right now. I want answers, but I'm not sure if that's why I'm doing a writer's block.
Oh, right. Well, we can talk to you about later about publishing. We have all the answers about that. But it's good to set your books aside. You're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
I don't do that, and I really should. I just can't. I want it over with after a year. I want it done. But it's good. Set it aside. Look at it a month later. And,
I have another question.
yeah.
Someone that read something that I wrote said you might want to send it to a magazine to publish it. Can you do that and also make a book as well?
Oh yeah. I mean,
You can-
sure.
You can do that.
I mean, are you talking an excerpt from your book, or we
No,
have
it's just
changed
the
a
actual
little bit?
story.
Changed?
The actual whole thing.
Oh, the whole thing. I can't answer that question. But
In that case, wouldn't it, the difference for her would be if you wanted to send it to a magazine, that's one thing, but if they want the rights,
Right.
then you're gonna
Yeah.
have to say yes or no. But if you
Right.
self-publish, it's still gonna matter what platform you put it on.
Right.
If you're traditionally published, they pretty much own the book.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any
If
other
I can put
questions?
a plug in for Kate, oh, Kate's not here anymore. They're going to have their magazine for this, for
Yeah.
the Moon River Cafe.
Right.
Yeah. And I submitted something to it, and in the contract, I think you can't republish it again for like 6 months maybe, I can't remember, 3 months to 6 months. So maybe it depends on who's putting out your magazine and what their rules are.
Yeah, it's a literary journal. She's created that. Yeah. So that's good. And yeah, I know you're dying to. Yeah.
I didn't know that magazines still like publish books. Is it serialized or is it?
No, I
they
think
just put an entire
she's
book
talking
in?
about a short story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they do that too much anymore. You know, Amazon came out with the thing. What was the name of it? Vella.
It's
Yeah, where Vella was just like that. You could write a book and you could put in like chapters at a time and sell each chapter. And I thought that was a great idea, and I tried it, and a friend of mine tried it, and you might have tried it. It didn't work. They shut it down.
It's like
after
buying
about
each
2
episode
years.
on Amazon Prime. It's not
Yeah, right. Yeah, it didn't work. But things changed. You know, they used to do that all the time. But Sherlock Holmes, things, and Dickens, they did that.
Yeah.
But we don't wear button shoes anymore.
I thought that was like the Victorian era.
All right, any questions? So what I'd like to do, if you're interested, these books are all for sale. They're $15. I'll autograph them. You can pick one up. I'll sign it and bring it to the cash register, and you'll be helping Kate out, helping me out, if you're interested. But if there aren't any, yes.
I have a question about the one that you wanted to submit to for the Argo Award.
Yeah,
About Melbourne.
yeah.
In your opinion, or in how am I better reword it? In your beta reader's opinion, is it award worthy? Truly?
They seem to
If
like
you put
it.
yourself outside of that,
I can't. I mean, they liked it.
The beta
Yeah, but they're not going to
readers
say, Jim, this really sucked. And I don't think they're going to say that. But
they,
no,
they wouldn't say that to you?
No,
No?
they
Well,
give me
then
some
you didn't
hints.
do beta right.
You're the next one. Well, let me tell you a little bit about that book. So, do you know what a cozy mystery is? So there's any genre you write, there's subgenres. And for mysteries, there's about this many. Amateur sleuth, private eye, all kinds of things. Well, one of them is a cozy mystery. And what is a cozy mystery? If you ever watched Murder, She Wrote on TV, that's a cozy mystery. It's usually an older lady, no swearing, and no blood and guts. The body's over there, you know? And she has a knitting shop or something like that. So this was very much a cozy mystery, and cozies sell. So I wanted it kind of be I really wasn't trying to write it, but the more I wrote it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm writing a cozy mystery. Well, I got to the end, and I just had to spiff it up a little. I'm like, oh, it's driving me crazy. So I had some shooting and rest of my body falling and everything. So, end of the cozy. Now, if I tried to sell that as a cozy, I would probably be murdered, because they would not be happy because it's not a cozy. And you have to stick with the genre.
Personally, I am a fan of books that switch up to a completely different genre halfway through. It's very interesting.
Yeah, that's, and with mine, with the two storylines, I have some of that. So, yep. All the questions? No. Any others? All right. Well, thank you very much for coming. I hope you enjoyed it.